This is Mr. Martin. These are video notes for Pre-Calculus Advanced. We're in Unit 5. We're talking about the unit circle. And make sure you're on the page in your notes packet that has this picture of the unit circle. Basically, I'm looking at just the first quadrant here. And we're going to kind of build the unit circle in this video. So when I say build, we're going to figure out all the angles, and we're going to figure out all the coordinates, and we're actually going to figure out the tangents as well. So the first thing I want to talk about before we get any farther is the different quadrants. So we know in the first quadrant the x is positive and the y is positive. So typically what I'll do here is I'll write something like positive, positive. And then I'll usually include outside of that what the tangent would be based on the x and the y. So since we're using both of these values with division to find the tangent, and we'll talk more about that later, since these are both positive, the tangent would also be positive. So a lot of times what you'll see here is you'll see an A, and we'll associate this with the word all. So all the trig functions are positive in the first quadrant. And then when we move over to the second quadrant, over here I know that the x is negative because we're going to the left, and the y is positive. So when I divide these two values, it's actually going to be the y divided by the x, but we'll talk about that also. We're going to end up with a negative. So the x is negative, the y is positive, and the tangent's going to turn out to be negative because it's based on those. And the letter that we would associate with this is the letter S for students. So all students here, all the trig functions are positive. Here, S stands for sine. Only the sine, which is based on the y-coordinate, the y-coordinate right there is going to be positive. Moving on to the next quadrant, we've got negative and negative. And when you divide a negative by a negative, you get a positive. And the letter we would associate with this is T. So all students take. The T here stands for tangent. Only the tangent function is positive. We see that out here because we're doing negative divided by negative. And then the last quadrant, the fourth quadrant, we've got positive, negative. When you do negative divided by positive, you get negative. And we can see only the cosine, which is based on the x, is going to be positive. That would be our C. So our mnemonic device for remembering this is all students take classes. The first quadrant, all of them, all the trig functions are positive. In the second quadrant, only the sine is positive. In the third quadrant, only the tangent is positive. And in the fourth quadrant, only the cosine is positive. So we'll keep that in mind. We're going to come back to that much later. So let's start building here. And we can see we've got these little points marked off on the circle. This is a circle that's going to have a radius of 1. That's why it's called a unit circle. And we're going to start right over here. I'm actually going to start outside of this box because I'm going to use this box when I come back. So if we're starting here at this point, this would be 0 radians, which would also be 0 degrees. And my xy coordinate here, if this is a unit circle, we're going to the right 1, and we're not going up or down anything, so that's well, it's going to be the same there anyway, but 1 comma 0. That should be 0 degrees. Okay, and then outside here, I'm going to put the tangent. So I'm going to add a box here for it, but I probably will just put it outside the boxes for the rest. So the tangent is going to be the y over the x. Okay, this is the y value divided by the x value. The y value, that's going to be our sine value, sine, and the x value, that's going to be our cosine value. This is a really key concept here, which we'll continue to talk about. So if I do 0 divided by 1, that's going to be 0, so the tangent here is going to be 0. Okay, so our next angle up here is going to be 30 degrees. And if I went ahead and I converted that to radians, and really what you want to do is you want to start doing almost everything in terms of radians. The sooner you get comfortable with those, the better. And again, you should have done this material before, so hopefully this is just a review and you'll pick up some new things here. And then we'll talk about the coordinates and the tangent in a minute. Our next one is going to be 45 degrees, which would be our pi over 4. And then we would have 60 degrees, which is our pi over 3. So notice in my first quadrant, we're looking at patterns here. My pi over 6 is closer to the x-axis. My pi over 3, which is bigger, is closer to the y-axis, and my 45 is right in the middle. So let's go back and let's take a look at a triangle. And all of these triangles are going to be special right triangles, okay? Because this angle that I have here is 60, which is pi over 3, and if you remember in a 30, 60, 90 triangle, there was a special relationship between the sides. The sides are in a ratio of 1 to root 3 to 2, okay? And this 2 would represent our hypotenuse, but we know here that our hypotenuse is 1. So if I want to make this a 1, I'll just divide it by 2, which means I have to divide everything else by 2. So then in a right triangle with a hypotenuse of 1, the ratio of the sides becomes 1/2 to root 3 over 2 to 1. Okay, 2 over 2 is 1. So what that tells me here is that the length of this side of the triangle opposite my 60 is going to be root 3 over 2, and the side adjacent to my pi over 3 is going to be 1/2. And what that tells me about this point here is that its coordinates are going to be 1/2 comma root 3 over 2. So I have 1/2 comma root 3 over 2. All right, and again, I'm going to put the tangent outside here because the tangent is just the y divided by the x. So if I do root 3 over 2 divided by 1/2, so I've got root 3 over 2 divided by 1/2. That's equal to root 3 over 2 times 2 over 1. These 2's cancel out. I'm left with root 3. So the tangent here becomes root 3. Okay, so if you recall, the way we're going to use this is that, and I'll repeat this several times, this value here is going to be the cosine of theta. This value of here is going to be the sine of theta. And you want to get used to working in radians. All right, now my pi over 6, this is the same triangle as this one. We're just turning it a different way. So we're turning it this way, okay, which just means that our coordinates are going to flip-flop. So now I've got root 3 over 2 and 1/2. Okay, same triangle, just flipped it down. And again, if I look at my tangent, I've got 1/2 divided by root 3 over 2. These 2's in the denominators are going to cancel out. That's a little shortcut. So that's 1 over root 3, which when I rationalize is going to be root 3 over 3. So my tangent out here is going to be root 3 over 3. And then my last triangle, this 45, 45, 90, we're getting a little messy here, so I'm just going to put it over here. So here's my 45, 45, 90, and we knew that this ratio was 1 to 1 to root 2, but this root 2 was my hypotenuse, which now is 1, so in order to make that 1, I'll divide by root 2, divide by root 2, divide by root 2, which means that each of these sides is 1 over root 2, but again we want to rationalize, which would make it root 2 over 2. This is actually going to be negative since I'm in the second quadrant, but that's okay. And this is going to be root 2 over 2. Right? So, and that's what these simplify to. That one there, that one there. Okay, so if we go back here in the first quadrant, I can see my coordinates here are going to be root 2 over 2 and root 2 over 2. And then when I do my tangent out here, my tangent's going to be the y over the x. Since they're the same, the tangent is going to be 1. Okay, so this gives us the 3 angles in the first quadrant. Let's go ahead and just do the quadrant angle at the top, and then we'll continue this video we'll continue this in the next video. So up here at the top, we know we have 90 degrees, and 90 is going to be pi over 2. And we know my coordinates here, since I'm on the unit circle, I'm going up 1, so I didn't go any in the x direction, and I went up 1 in the y direction. For my tangent's going to be y divided by x. I can't divide by 0, so my tangent here is going to be undefined. So this gives us the first quadrant, and really the only thing that I recommend that you memorize here is your first quadrant, because once you know the first quadrant, you can find all the other angles and coordinates, and we'll talk about those in the next video. So again, if you have any questions, make sure you write those down, and we'll see you in the next video.